Wes and I. My name is Marty Imes, and I'm one of the founders here at Culture Stoke. And today we're love to talk to you about how you can build your organization back from something that has been, I would say, really not only transform, kind of build things back into a brighter future, but to really transform the experience and also the results that your business gets. So I'd love to introduce my good partner, Wes, and we will be diving into how to transform things from transactional to transformational so you can build your organization that will withstand anything. And what we'll do, just to keep things kind of relatively consistent, if you have questions or comments that come up during our quick discussion, please put them in the chat. Afterwards, we'd love to go through those and we'll flush out those questions. But we'll dive into things because time is short. First and foremost, really reflecting back on the last year, as I'm sure that most everyone will agree that it was not only dynamic, but really full of uncertainty. And when you look at our experience with the workplace, it really revealed three important things. Number one, it revealed people's true relationships with work. And as a whole, I know this is very oversimplification, that there's, I would say, a good majority of people experience work on a transaction. They view work as a transactional event where they're exchanging their time and effort for money. So how can we elevate that experience for something that's transactional in nature to something that's more transformational and meaningful on a deeper and personal and professional level? Secondly, it revealed our true organizational culture. This isn't necessarily the culture that's one promoted on our company career pages, but really the deep experience that people have when they're doing their work on a day-to-day basis. Thirdly, it revealed and really anchored into the fact that an organization's success is dependent upon its people. And knowing that success is dependent on people, as we look to the future, we really should ask ourselves, how can we shape or fundamentally change people's relationships with work? And that's a really great question, but first we have to understand the best ways that we can measure people's relations with work. Wes, if you might be able to advance the slide, that'd be awesome, thank you, is through this measurement, which is a concept and model known as employee lifetime value. Employee lifetime value is a model that measures the economic value or the output that a person brings to an organization over time. And so as you'll see here on the diagram, the x-axis represents time. So spanning from the start date and all the way to the time an employee leaves. The y-axis represents the employee output. So this is something that you'll see when an employee starts, their output is actually negative. And that the reason for this is because the team has really, or the employee has consumed resources from the recruiting and the hiring team. And then as they ramp up productivity, they'll reach their next milestone from going from a new team member to someone who's now fully contributed or has been onboarding. And at some point, as the employee growth plateaus, they'll start to consider other employment options until they reach their last day. Generally, at this point, the employee lifetime value, or ELTV, is represented by the green shaded area underneath the curve. And if those who like calculus, this is the integral. And the goal is generally to make this area as tall and wide as possible. And this will also help kind of understand and bring into mind like the ROI of the investments that organizations want to make when it comes to strengthening their organization through hiring, onboarding, talent management, etc. So if you go to the next slide, Wes, there's really four fundamental ways where the employee lifetime value can be maximized under this curve. Number one, you can shorten the amount of time it takes to ramp to from a new team member to a fully contributing team member. Secondly, you can increase how high someone can go in terms of output. And this is traditionally done when it comes to employee development. So making sure that they have an onboarding process. And before we go into like management and development, which is where really number three is really increase how high someone over time. And fourthly, the way that you can impact and maximize this is by lengthening the time that someone stays with their company. And these things can really be impacted by not only onboarding, hiring, talent development, but also a strong positive culture. But if we are going to build back in a way that really helps our organization succeed, it's really important for us to focus on behave is directly going to impact the way that our organization succeeds and the results that we get. And Wes, I'll kick it over to you for the next.
So thanks for that, Marty. I really appreciate it. So there's always this dynamic in the workplace, right, where we have, especially in the organizational development world, we talk about these two dynamics that are at play: results and behaviors. And really what we're going to focus in on, and I know this is a lean conference, and so what I want you to make sure to do is understand that we're going to talk in general about organizational culture, but if lean is important to you, that should be a fundamental part of your culture, right? And so there's this dynamic in the workplace of results and behaviors, and which one drives which. Do results drive behaviors, or do behaviors drive results? And it's kind of a silly question, because in my belief, in our belief, those things are inextricably tied. Okay, results drive behavior, behavior drive results. And when we think about our culture in the workplace, the thing that we really, if we distill it down to its base level, it is about our culture. And so really the question that we need to ask ourselves is, does how we work matter? Okay, if all we care about are the results that we get, how we work matters is less important. Ends justify the means. Let's get it. Let's get that bottom line. But looking at those sticky notes that were on that Miro board, there was lots of concerns about how do we engage? How do we get collaboration? How do we do those sorts of things? And that's really what our culture manifests itself. And that's where those things manifest. But the hard part is understanding what is culture. It's this very nebulous concept, and this is what makes it problematic in the workplace. But what we have here is what we call our tangible culture model, and it really helps us to distill those things down and make culture a little bit more tangible, feel a little bit more actionable. And so the things that we find is that our culture shows itself in 4 different ways. One, how we treat each other. And so this is each other internal to our organization. This can be at the team level, this can be at the group level, or the organizational level. But how do we treat each other, the people that are kind of under this umbrella? How we treat those externally, these can be our suppliers, these can be our customers, these can be our competitors, these can be the folks in our community. How we view and solve problems, are problems meant to be brought out in the open? Do we want active problem solving? Do we swarm and get big quick? Do we want ideas, or do we want people to just put their heads down and do the work? And lastly, how we communicate. That is a very large umbrella. Okay, this is not just the language that we speak, but this is also the vehicles in which we communicate, but it's also the context in which our communication happens. Do we like humor in our workplace? Do we like straight talk? Do we like direct words? Do we like, are we passive aggressive in our workplaces? Like those types of things. And so really what we're talking about in culture is getting very specific about how those things show up, how those behaviors show up. And when we say behavior, a definition that I love about it is, or that I love for behavior, is an observable act. It's the things that we can see with our eyes, right? And so Marty was talking about the lifetime value of an employee. And for those of you who have been in the lean world for a long time, you've heard about the hidden factory, where it costs 10 times as much to redo something, okay, that you've pumped out incorrectly in the first place. You can actually take that same logic to your employees. It costs you 10 times as much to bring on somebody new and get them onboarded than it would be to just really be intentional about your culture and build a place where people not only want to come to work, okay, but they actually want to stay at your work, okay? So how do we shape these things, right? So culture is big. How do we shape it? And what we like to say is there's 3 cultural levers that you can pull. First and foremost, you have your organizational infrastructure. Okay, these are the rules, right? Okay, this is your policies, your procedures, your processes, your documentation, your onboarding, all the way to your progressive discipline, how you promote, okay? All of those things should be tied to this kind of more overarching, how we work matters culture that we're trying to build. Next is building a spirit of appreciation. And this is for the individual in your organization. This is how they feel valued. This is how you really affirm what's acceptable versus unacceptable behavior, is through appreciating people when they show up the right way, not just for doing the right thing, but doing the right thing the right way. And then the last bit is about celebration. And this is really about bringing people, the team together and celebrating those milestones and really tying that back to, reflecting that back to why it was important for us to behave and act this way in the first place. Okay, that's what celebration is all about. So that's kind of the team. You need to have all three of these because they become problematic when you just have one or two. Okay, so if you don't have the rules, what's interesting about appreciation and celebration is that it's no substance. It's not as meaningful, right? Because it's not counterbalanced to something concrete. It's not put up against something, you're just kind of, fumbling through. So if you don't have the appreciation side of things, you can also have an energy drain. People don't feel valued. They're just going to be done. They're going to come in, they're going to work just enough to not get fired and do what they're told. And if you don't have this part right here, the celebration, there's no tie to impact. People aren't able to extrapolate and get that constancy of purpose that Shingo always talks about. They don't know, it's just kind of that on to the next one mentality. Like, we fixed the problem, we're on to the next one. We don't take time to look at where we've come. So with that, I want to kick it over to Marty and we'll open it up for questions.